It's been a big week for news. 20 Democrats took the stage for the first time, and 9 Supreme Court justices finished their term with 2 key cases that could reshape how our democracy functions. Here to reflect on it all are Shields and Brooks. That's syndicated columnist Mark Shields and New York Times columnist David Brooks, who joins us from Aspen, Colorado. Hello to both of you. David, I'm going to start with you. You're in Aspen, but I gather you did watch those debates over the last 2 nights. Let's start by talking about the main takeaways.
Yeah, I'm getting in touch with the real America out here. I think my main takeaway is how far the Democratic Party has gone to the left and how little the moderates in the debates have any interest in fighting it. 2 candidates, Warren and Sanders, said they wanted to get rid of all private health plans, employer-based health plans. Only 13% of Americans agree with that. All of the candidates of all stripes seem to think they can't get anybody to their left on immigration policy, and they're wandering very close to sort of an open borders type approach. And this would be, I think, devastating in the fall. This country has 35% of people who call themselves conservative, 35% who call themselves moderate, and 26% who call themselves liberals. You can't win with 26%. But this debate was entirely within that little parenthesis.
Is that what you're seeing, Mark, in this first debate?
Well, I don't see things exactly the way you do from Aspen. But no, I would say this, Judy, for those Democrats for whom the highest moral objective politically in 2020 is the retirement of Donald Trump, it's not been a good week. If you think about it, the great unfinished business of Franklin Roosevelt's New Deal and Lyndon Johnson's Great Society and Harry Truman's Fair Deal and Jack Kennedy was national health insurance. And at great political cost, the Democrats, without any help from the Republicans, with total objection and resistance, passed it in 2010 under a Democratic President, Barack Obama. And ever since then, 5 consecutive elections, Republicans have gone, we're going to repeal it, As a consequence, Democrats, public by 2 to 1 thinks the Democrats are there in health care. So what do the Democrats suggest? We're going to get rid of it. We're going to get rid of it. Going to get rid of it. You like private health insurance? Do you have? And guaranteed pre-existing conditions are covered under the Affordable Care Act. We're going to get rid of private insurance. I mean, and this is a party, let's be honest, in the polarized Washington, couldn't pass an adjournment motion. But they're going to pass this in national health. So I'd say it was impractical, unhelpful, and flirted with open borders on immigration. And I just think the image coming out of that was not of a party that was responding to voters, but responding to its own interests and its own constituencies.
But David, when you stack all the Democrats up, isn't it the case that most of them are saying they're not ready to throw out private insurance yet?
Right, that is true. And I think one thing that's worth reminding ourselves about is that most voters are new to these people, and the instant polls after the debates are not quite what we read on Twitter. A lot of people, and I mean a lot of the candidates, saw their approval rating go up significantly because for Cory Booker, it's the first look for a lot of people, and they sort of like what they saw. For Biden, the conventional wisdom, he did so poorly, but not so much the instant polls. He did suffer a little with that Harris interchange on busing, but people still like Joe Biden. And so he hasn't sunk himself. I do think he has to prove next time that he's able to go toe-to-toe with Donald Trump. And if he couldn't go toe-to-toe with Kamala Harris on an attack that was he should have anticipated, it'll be harder to go toe-to-toe with Trump. So in some sense, his debate performance next time becomes much more crucial.
How did you read how Joe Biden handled last night?
Badly. I mean, he was unprepared. He had to know the charge was coming, having had so much coverage for his mention, sort of in a reminiscence about Jim Eastland of Mississippi and Herman Talmadge of Georgia, his colleagues whom he'd gotten along with, and who were arch segregationists, both. And that he was unprepared for it, almost like he recoiled, and it was personal. I thought that Joe Biden stood in bad contrast, quite frankly, to Pete Buttigieg, the mayor of South Bend, who accepted responsibility. He owned the fact that the South Bend Police Department had failed to recruit African Americans, and took that responsibility and said, it's on me. And Biden just somehow couldn't do that. And it was a tortured argument he made for the difference between his position in Wilmington and Kamala Harris is, I mean, let's be very frank, civil rights has been a national issue in this country. States' rights has been the resistance mantra. And I just thought Joe Biden did not handle it well. When he was asked what his principal objective would be in the first day in office, he said to defeat Donald Trump. Well, if you're going to have the first day in office, that's sort of a given that you've defeated Donald Trump.
So David, whether it was Kamala Harris or Pete Buttigieg, or, you know, lest we forget the first night when we had Elizabeth Warren up there with the others, were there candidates who significantly helped themselves in these debates?
Yeah, I would say Warren and Harris would be the two. What's interesting is right now the key fight is who's going to be the progressive rival, who's going to be the face for progressive side of the party, and Warren and Sanders and Harris are all vying for it. I think Warren and Harris did particularly well. I've always thought Harris is going to be the most formidable progressive, just because her whole life, going back to when she was a prosecutor, she's just a forceful arguer. She says, I have an eye for an enemy, and I know how to go after them. And that strikes me as right for the mood of a lot of progressive and a lot of Democrats. So I think they help themselves. What's interesting to me is, will there be a moderate reprisal? Amy Klobuchar from Minnesota should have come up and say, no, I don't think our party should go there. She sort of pulled that punch. Michael Bennet from Colorado tried to do that. And then the final piece is Buttigieg, who seems to hover between the two camps. And so I'd say his path to the nomination, and the way it looks today, is the two camps get tired of fighting each other and they need some sort of unity candidate, and Buttigieg could potentially be that kind of person.
How do you see that, whether anybody in this group helped themselves?
Judy, I'd take us back to December 9th, 2003, 6 weeks before the Iowa caucuses. Al Gore, former vice president, who had won the popular vote against George Bush in 2000, just 3 years earlier, broke the political world wide open. He endorsed Howard Dean, the Democratic chairman, former chairman, and made his nomination inevitable. 5 weeks later, it was over. It was the Dean campaign. I mean, so this is the opening day of the season. That was what we're seeing. I would say this. I mean, I'd say collectively for the Democrats, it was not good. Just think of the 80 yards of the field that Republicans have surrendered to them on the abortion issue. I mean, Republicans have been running away from what Republicans did in Alabama and Georgia and in Missouri and Ohio. And the president has been distancing himself even. And what do Democrats do? I mean, they basically, you know, just endorse abortion and throw in, well, how about trans people covering abortion? I mean, to me, they just wasn't thinking in terms strategically. I mean, they owned the majority position in the country, safe, legal, rare. And you know, so to me, I just don't understand the strategy.
I would say across all issues, there's an insularity problem. They sometimes talk as if they're campaigning for Brooklyn. And so on a lot of issues, whether it's the economy, whether it's abortion, whether it's immigration, I don't think they're quite perceiving how a lot of people, even in Democratic House districts, are perceiving them and seeing them as something quite strange.
I want to ask you both about the big Supreme Court decisions that came down yesterday. David, I'm going to come back to you on this. You saw a divided court, two big decisions. The first one on what's called partisan gerrymandering. It's when states draw lines based on, for partisan reasons, to hurt the other political party. The court basically said that's okay, that can continue.
Yeah, I think we're all disgusted by gerrymandering. It's a complete manipulation of the electorate. The question is, how do we fix it? And I sort of think that the best way to do it is through independent commissions. Voters in 8 states so far, 5 in 2018, voted to create an independent commission and to have them draw the lines. And I frankly think that's a better option than letting legislators do it, who are inherently compromised because it's political, or letting the courts do it, who have no accountability. So I'm sort of glad that the courts decided this is not going to be a court issue. We're not going to impose this on the country, because I think it would politicize the courts. But it does mean everybody has to work a lot harder to try to get independent commissions in their own state.
The court found out that segregated schools were separate but unequal. But we're not going to go near that because it's going to be too difficult. That's basically what the decision was yesterday. We found out that this is unjust, it's undemocratic, It's corrupting to have this system, but we're not going to dirty our own hands with it. I agree with David. In the best of all possible worlds, it's an Iowa, Arizona approach. We have a commission, and it's fair and fairly done, and not done like it's been done in Ohio or Maryland or North Carolina. But you know, it's got to be remedied. I mean, we're talking about a democracy that's under siege in this country and from Russia, as we've learned again. So, you know, to me, I just think Justice Kagan was absolutely right. It's a duty and a responsibility to act.
Both of these decisions are very much affecting the functioning of our democracy. Just quickly, David, less than 2 minutes. Of course, the other decision had to do with the Trump administration's attempt to insert a citizenship question in the 2020 census. The court, in this case, said the Trump argument had not been one that they could buy. So, and they sent it back and said, "This, for now, we're not going to let this go forward." What does this say to you?
Yeah, the word I think the justices used was contrived. It was a contrived argument. They were trying to think of some way to deter immigration or not provide benefits for communities that have a lot of immigrants or maybe undocumented immigrants. So I think there's no reason to ask this. There's no reason to try to use the census to push people into the shadows, which is really what this is an attempt to do. So I wish there had been more clear ruling, but at least they did utter the elemental truth that this was a contrived reasoning, which was really an attempt to deter immigration from coming out into the open.
And this was a case, Mark, just quickly, where the Chief Justice joined with the four more liberal.
He did, and it was based on a lie. I mean, the Congress saying the Justice Department wanted this to enforce the Voting Rights Act, which was a total fabrication. It came from the Department of Commerce. It came from the political arm of the Trump organization. Wilbur Ross, the Secretary of Commerce, did not originate with him intellectually, but it did politically. So it was obviously just an attempt to rob people of what is deserved. I mean, not simply representation in numbers, but so many programs the formula is based upon need. And if we don't even know these people, as David said, if they're in the shadows, if they don't exist, they're going to be deprived of what they are owed.
Both of these decisions very much worth reading over the weekend if people haven't had a chance to so far. Thank you both. Mark Shields, David Brooks.